Open things.
Oh, wait.
Oh, no, Virgo.
There we are. We'll get autographs.
Good evening and welcome to the February 2nd, 2026 Committee of the Whole meeting. All members of council are present with the exception of Deputy Mayor Marshall, who sends his regrets. He's under the weather tonight. The meeting is being held in person and is also being live streamed on YouTube. I'd like to acknowledge the members of the public that are here and present tonight and that are listening online. We appreciate the diverse population that we have living in Middletown. First order of business, the approval of the agenda. I so move.
Second.
Is there any, anything to add or to amend on the agenda? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Approval of the minutes. Did anybody see anything out of character with the minutes or? No? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. And our first or next business is presentation from our friends from the Railroad Museum. Mr. David Hankinson on the end and Mr. Bill Lindley sitting next to him.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
We almost feel like we're family here. We seem to come on a regular basis, usually asking for money.
Yeah.
What family?
You know, that's family, right? You've heard this before.
Sure. What we like to do is take a few minutes and talk to members of council and staff and visitors about who we are, because I think there's some new people. This will be old news for some of you, but it's important to understand what we're trying to do. We'll talk a little bit about what we're doing, what the future looks like, and ask you to participate in any discussion that you might have at the end of it. So we think we need about 15 minutes if that fits with everybody. And I'll introduce my colleague here. I think a lot of people know him, but this is Bill Lindley. He's a member of the board. He's also our archivist and knows more about trains than most people I know. So we're very fortunate to have him, and Bill will lead off talking a bit about what I've just indicated, who we are, where we're going, what we're going to do. So Bill, it's yours.
Thank you, David. Madam Mayor and councilors. You might wonder who we are, and we're incorporated society, incorporated in the province in 2017. We assumed responsibility for the station just 5 years ago in January of 2021. And we became a charity registered federally last December of 2021 as well. As Dave mentioned, we have an active board. There are 7 members on the board from Annapolis, Kings, and Lunenburg counties, so most of them are quite local. We're also in good standing with the Nova Scotia Registry of Joint Stocks. We're an active society. We have 33 members spread across the country, most of whom I would say are in Nova Scotia, but we do have some outliers in Alberta and also in the state of Missouri. He has a personal connection to the Atlantic Railway, which is one of our key railways. He grew up with his grandparents in Digby, so he's often involved. Perhaps we could start the slideshow, sorry.
Can everyone hear Bill?
Yeah, good. Okay, good. We're on the second image. Can we go back one, please? Oops, wrong way. There we go. Thanks. So you can see our logo up in the left quadrant of the screen. And below it, the Halifax and Southwestern Railway, which was a little under-recognized in the history of Middleton, but it came over from the South Shore. Its primary route was from Halifax to Yarmouth, but they had a spur line built in the 1880s, which came to Middleton through from Bridgewater, but it actually ran initially from Lunenburg. So there was a daily mixed train, which is a train that carries both freight and passenger. And if you wanted to spend 3 hours riding from Bridgewater to Middleton, you could do so. A little bit more of an anecdote. I've read accounts of families who lived in the New Albany area, and they would come into town on Saturdays to buy the groceries. They'd come on the train, go back on the train. And It was quite a little service, but it was kind of geared that way. It went up from Bridgewater in the morning. Went back in the afternoon after laying over here for about 3 hours. Onto the bigger railway just for a few moments. That of course is the Dominion Atlantic, and you could see their herald featuring Evangeline on the side of a locomotive there in the upper right of the picture. That was designed to appeal to tourists and tourists coming on the Boston boats to Yarmouth and Digby. They would travel to places like the Digby Pines and the Cornwallis and Kentville and spend weeks there. So they were a very big part of the railways business in the 20s and 30s. So railway started in the Annapolis Valley in the mind of Thomas Chandler Halliburton way back in 1835. He envisaged a railway. He was the author of Sam Slick Stories, amongst other Nova Scotia tales. He envisaged a railway from Halifax through to Yarmouth, and it took about 50 years for that to happen. The railway actually arrived here in Middleton in 1870, and it was built to what was called a provincial gauge, which originated in Britain, and it was 5 foot 6 inches across between the rails. Present day trains are only 4 feet 8.5, but that made the railway a bit of an outlier in terms of its connectivity to other lines to Montreal. So in the mid 1880s, it was converted to standard gauge. And the railway at that time was called the Windsor and Annapolis. It had come through from Windsor and went to Annapolis. And next slide, please. Beyond there, you went up a boat to get to either Digby or St. John, and continued on to other connections beyond to Yarmouth. Here's a couple of images at the Middleton Station in the 1950s. Actually, in the summer of 1956, there's a steam train approaching Kentville, heading towards Digby and Yarmouth, and the going away shot taken at the same time. The train is approaching Canadian Canners, the little smokestack you see in the distance there. This is appropriate because this is the year that we're representing in the history of the life of the station. That summer was when steam trains went away on passenger trains and were replaced by, next slide, please, dayliners. And that was, as you can see, a self-propelled car. It was about as long as one of your buses and then half again. So about 90 feet long. It held 90 people. And but what you notice there is that there's no longer any conveyance for mail or baggage. So it's reduced the crew size from about 15 people on a conventional passenger train to just 2. So it was very economical and very effective. The speed was increased as well, and everyone was reasonably happy. But over the years, CPR's interest in passenger trains diminished. They'd always been something of a loss leader, and competition from highway motor coaches, especially for private cars, led to a lot less interest in the dayliner. So it took until 1990 for them to go away. Make sure they did. So that a dayliner is something that's on our shopping wish list for bringing back to Middleton in the future as a companion to next slide, please, our existing steam engines. So the station itself was, as some of you or many of you perhaps know, was built in just a 6-month period in 1916. It opened in January of 1917, and it was replaced and built to a standard CPR design because the previous station had burned down. It was a big 3-story station representing the importance of Middleton as a connection point between the CN lines and the CPR lines. Both railways, especially the CPR Dominion Atlantic, had big plans for Middleton. It was going to be what later moved to Kentville. It was going to have the railway car shops, locomotive shops, but for better or worse, that didn't happen. That Kentville would see those attributes. So one thing about the station here is it's not like the original station. The original station was just as seen at the left side of the frame, and it had a ladies' waiting room and a baggage room on the part, which is now a freight shed, that big octagonal box at the west end of the station. For many years, we thought that had been moved from a location where a similar building stood about 20 feet to the west. But don't form your conclusions based on what you're seeing. Get the facts. And it turned out that a friend of mine, Clementsport, gave me a newspaper clipping from 1965, which confirmed that this freight shed had been newly built. So they didn't do what I thought, chopped off the end of the station, moved the building, and presto, you have a bigger facility. They built that from scratch, and unfortunately, that prevented many years later, Parks Canada for recommending the preservation of the Middleton station. It was not felt worthy because the, shall I call it, monstrosity that they added in 1965, the new part, the freight shed. It really does distract from the architectural lines. It's not the greatest looking thing, but it does make kind of an interesting tale to hear about the history. Next slide, please. Here we have the last day of passenger service. This is a Saturday, January 13th, back in 1990. And a decision was made in Ottawa that all of the regional dayliner services in Atlantic Canada were going to be terminated. And that did come to pass, sadly, because, you know, it was, as you can see there in the 50s, there was one car. Even by the 80s, there were two, sometimes three cars on weekends. So it was a very popular service and very well used by local people. And the schedule was altered so that you could make a day trip from Yarmouth into the city and back again and do shopping or appointments. It was a very effective marketing strategy that was adopted. Next, please. Here's a steam engine from 1953. This would be the type of engine that's very like ours, what we've preserved. Ours is more unique than this because it has certain features which I like to think of as extra cost options. There were high efficiency additions at the time, but they didn't catch on. So we have one of two engines amongst the probably 200 that are preserved in Canada. Ours is almost unique, and that helps us attract visitors to see our museum. It's well worth having. You can see that the Scotian Gold Cannery, which was just west of the station back in the day, and that train would have been one of the ones going to Bridgewater. Next, please. And here's our steam engine, the 1274, which came to us through the auspices of particularly our first chair, Diane Lagarde, and Stephen McNeil. They talked about the after effects of what was going to happen with the assets above the Clements Park. And we got the engine delivered in December of 2020. And that's our welcome plaque that celebrates its transfer of ownership to us. And the chairman of CN at the time, Robert Pace, is on the left in the photograph. Next, please. And here's our other gem of a steam engine. It's the oldest surviving example of a Canadian locomotive company's steam locomotive. Again, something that I like to say we're small but mighty. And, it's to say the oldest of its type. It's therefore very attractive to visitors. It's also a local engine. With most of its operating life in Bridgewater, and it would have assembled the trains that came to Middleton, those mixed trains that I spoke of. On the right of the frame are our two little shunters. They've since been repainted. I haven't been able to get an evening shot because they were painted into the fall, but they show well in the photograph. Their size relative to the box garden, quite small. Next, please. And a couple of other assets. The brown object on the extreme right of the frame, that's a turntable, which reverses the engine by spinning it like a bottle. It came from Bridgewater. So our steam engine, I call them the married pair, because the steam engine belongs on the turntable. One of these days down the road, we'll hopefully install the turntable, be able to turn the steam engine on it, bring back something from the 1950s. The truck next to the turntable is delivering our utility trailer, which is a storage van that we got 2 or 3 years ago. And it was a real blessing to have when our fire happened, and we were able to store some of the returning assets trailer. On the upper left is our 1950 Fruhoff trailer. It's a 32-footer positioned exactly where the railway would have exchanged freight from trains to trucks for local delivery. And we're on the lookout for a matching tractor from that area, so it will be a complete unit. I'm hoping that this year we'll also be able to letter it properly. It's actually an American trailer, but it's of the right style that the CPR had in Arrow. Next, please. Here's our big show layout, which naturally features Middleton, and you can see in the model of the station as it looked in the late 1940s, that light color. I should have mentioned back a few slides ago that as the railway tried to demarket passenger service, they changed to a drab color. You saw that red with the black trim, not nearly as appealing as what you see there. The station above it is Round Hill, and the diagram in the lower right or lower left, excuse me, shows the extent of the railway, which is 16 feet wide, 35 feet long, and it portrays the railway from Windsor through to Deep Brook. And that's significant because that was the extent where the gypsum was hauled to get around the fact that the Minas Basin is quite choked with ice in the winter. So by using the railway to get to Round Hill, or excuse me, Deep Brook, they could ship year round. And in the background is above that is the unloading facility and the representation of Annapolis Royal. Next, please. Some of our collections, we held 4 major Canadian collections, some with a basis in Nova Scotia. Just a year ago, we got over 50,000 prints and negatives from Ken McDonald's collection. He was a photographer born in the Truro area. He lived in Fredericton later years, but he has thousands of items which we're presently valuing, but it's a gold mine of historic information. We're very fortunate nowadays to have effective climate control that we can compete with major museums to attract collections like this because we have archival quality storage. A couple of the other items on the picture there are a conductor's hat from the railway, which we have in Atlantic. The interesting little thing that looks like a spaceship sort of item is an apple heater that was put in cars here in Middleton by a night watchman. It was to prevent apples from freezing in the wintertime. And the device would travel to Halifax with the apples to keep them above freezing temperature in winter. Apples were a tremendously big business until the end of World War II in here. Next, please. Here's some of the restoration work that we've done. You can see the difference in the paint scheme before and after on the freight shed and the station. We used authentic color, so we were able to find under the eaves of the station, the paint chips, and Alan's here was able to match them. So we know this is what the station looked like in the 1940s. On the left of the frame, you can see the wooden cab that we built to replace the obviously worn out one on the engine, the 1274 at the upper left. 3 of us, including myself, went to Lindbergh Foundries. They were able to make, just before they closed, a bronze number plate for the engine, which we'll proudly display. So far, no vandalism. Lovely town that way. Go ahead, please. Next. Here's our fire, which I think we told you about. That was quite catastrophic for a young organization like ours. That happened in April of 2023. Fortunately, a neighbor saw the flames. She took out her garbage on Friday night instead of Saturday morning. If that had not been, we would have lost everything. But as you can see in the picture on the right, we've taken it back again using authentic paint chips. Fortunately, we had replacement value insurance. So for instance, there's $20,000 worth of Douglas fir trim that one. It seems extravagant, it was painful to stain it, but it had been stained and it had been Douglas fir, so with that kind of insurance coverage, you get back what you had. Next, please. One of our more recent additions was a caboose from the Maritimes, which had run in Truro and probably came here. We don't have the records to verify that, but it was delivered, donated to us, delivered by the province with their funding in September of 2024. It's open to the public. We're hoping to paint it this year. The paint's getting a little faded. Next, please. Here's some of our mini exhibits, little montage of books and binders in the middle is part of our Ken McDonald collection. Up above it is an old steam engine from the Nova Scotia Central, which came from Bridgewater. That was a builder's photograph when it was built in the 1890s. The person with the snazzy shirt is Dan Conlon. He's a former curator of Pier 21 in Halifax. He's now in retirement, and one of his first projects was build a train arrival board that he's holding against the station, and he secured it to the building that day. And that lists all the trains and expected arrival times and actual arrival times. So it's something we didn't have, and Dan saw the opportunity and provided it to us. So it was a good example of how people want to help the museum and actually go ahead and do stuff like that. Next. So some of the other work in progress, we're working on the agent's office in the center. We hope to place interpretive panels there. And we've built, as you can see at the top, came to the town with our original CPR blueprints for a 1904 tool shed, and they approved it. So we got a building permit as we need to, and there you see the results. It will open next year, and Red Huntley, one of our master builders, is the lower left. He's operating a test run of our G-scale, large-scale railway, and that will be completed again. We hope to formally open it in June of this year. It will be moved onto the sand portion, and we'll again have buildings and whatnot. But just going back to the tool shed for a second, that was built with volunteers. You can see people like Bryson Kroll and Chris Baker working with Fred in the picture. But we're a local member of something called the Railway Heritage Association, which spans North America. We're one of the smaller members, of course, but one of the other members is in Revelstoke, British Columbia. They too built a replica tool shed. Their community forced them to build it to current code. So I love to tell that story because we were able to do it authentically, and they're quite envious of the fact that ours looks as it should, rather than having to be state built with new style and look. Anyway, I think that's all I have to say. If the question is, I think Dave's going to take over.
Well, perhaps we can talk a little bit about the impacts, Bill.
Oh, right. Sorry.
Thanks, Al.
Page 2.
Yeah.
Pardon me. Okay.
And maybe just before we go, are there questions at this point that anyone has? Or should we continue? All right.
Thank you. Okay, we have become a key destination point for visitors to the Annapolis Valley and to Middleton. We had over 2,000 visitors this year. That's what we're aware of. We are quite aware that on days that we're not open, Mondays and Tuesdays, and during the off season, that people visit the museum outside and Catch Can, they'll fill in a volunteer there on our Wednesday and Friday work days. We estimate there's probably another 1,000 people who come. Obviously, that has spin-off effects for restaurants, other types of businesses. So we've had a very steady flow of visitors ever since the steam engine arrived. That was a real turning point for us, the arrival of that first engine 5 years ago. We do work with the Annapolis East and Lek schools. We've hosted primary and third grade students. We did quite a extended program with them, letters to Santa Claus taken by train to the North Pole, were personalized and brought back to the students. That was quite a hit with the third graders. They made ornaments and decorated our Christmas tree, and we participate actively, we think, in things like Halloween and Christmas events with open houses. And our volunteers are there to welcome people and show them the aspects of the museum. In July, we welcomed our first motor coach tour, which is something we're going to pursue. They said they wanted to come for an hour, but they stayed for 2.5 hours. It was quite amazing. Fortunately, I guess they had time in their schedule, but they really enjoyed themselves. This was almost 50 people, most of them from the Brunswick, as I recall. One of our younger volunteers, Fielding Krauts, he was so inspired by his, I guess, mentoring our father ourselves to Paul at the museum. He is now in training as a railway conductor in Calgary, and he hopes to come back to Nova Scotia and work for the CN, running trains to Moncton. Since 2022, we spent over $1 million restoration of our station. A lot of that, of course, was fire restoration, but we did have a major Alcoa project, which was just winding down as the fire happened. Our assets have doubled in the last 3 years to almost $2 million. And we try as much as possible to use a buy local policy to support local businesses, particularly here in Middleton, but certainly in the Annapolis Valley. So we have local suppliers for our operating and supplies like building maintenance, materials, services, insurance, promotional materials, fuel oil, et cetera, et cetera. So we want to, seem to be active and try to be active in the community. Last year, as I say, we were open 91 days from the 1st of June through Labor Day. And after that, we like to be open, found it effective to be open on federally and provincially designated holidays when we do an open house using our volunteers. And we spent over $110,000 in our operating budget, most of which was locally, and we did employ 4 locally housed student interpreters for the summer period. We were quite blessed with 2 students from the federal program and then 2 more from the provincial. Obviously, we've applied for that again for this year, and hopefully they'll support a similar operating season. And we essentially operate on a break-even type of basis, being a not-for-profit. We're trying to put some money by to enhance our exhibits, but we are challenged to meet a $4,200 monthly operating budget. So like you, we're all thinking budgets this time of year and wondering, can we do this? I think Dave really wants to talk about future vision.
Yeah, I will. Thank you, Bill.
Okay.
There's so many things happening at the station. I don't know what to highlight without spending all evening here, and I'm sure you don't want to hear that. But we have a very interesting season coming up this year with the attention going to 3 major areas. The compound, which is the picture you see here, and we'll have interpreters there. We'll have more attention to the rolling stock this year. If you happen to come up at the station, you'll notice that some of them don't have quite all the markings they should have. And there are pieces that haven't been attached, pieces that we call the jewelry, things that had to be taken off to get under the underpasses when they brought the train up from down at Upper Clemens, for example. So there's a lot of work we need to do outside to enhance the rolling stock, because one of the things that you have to do is keep these pieces of equipment looking like they're current and ready to roll. And when people come, they expect to see that. So we're spending a lot of time this year on that area. And then the third area is the interpretation that Bill talked about. We don't have a lot of signage yet, and we're developing that because it's amazing that when you talk to people who visit the station, they all have a railroad story. There's something about trains that seems to catch most families, and they talk about stories, they talk about key events, and we're trying to interpret that as it applies to Middleton and the Valley. A lot of people have gone from here and gone off to school and done extremely well, or have started businesses and have come back and in one case contributing to us, which is very nice. But we have those major focus areas for this coming year. But I guess, major challenge for us is to have repeat visits. People go to a museum when they have family or company and they say, okay, I've seen that. We need to have something going on all the time to make it attractive. So people will come up and have lunch there, or they'll come and bring the children, or there'll be an event going on. So we're very interested in partnering with the town as much as we can in any kind of social events or festivals and things that are going on. On our own behalf, we are really thinking 3 to 5 years out in terms of what everything could look like. And it's quite exciting when you think about it. And I just want to sort of plant a seed. Bill mentioned that we have put expression of interest in a dayliner. That would be a tremendous thing to have locally. It would probably be strict. It wouldn't be operational, but it leads itself to a museum shop or meeting rooms, coffee, a lot of different things that could be done, or just the train experience. We can do things now with sound and holograms. It looks like it's a real story, and we could make a train ride, for example. On the other hand, we do have those 2 small engines. One of them is operational. So somewhere down the line, maybe 5 to 6 years, we can work something out with the government to allow us to extend the track along the trail and run 3 or 4 miles down the road and back and make rides for people. So those are the kinds of things we're thinking about down the road. We talked about installing the turntable. That's a major project, probably 2 to 3 years out. But with that comes a building where we could store vehicles that are not so strong in the elements. We know that other museums have wooden cars that ran on the rails here that we could probably buy, rent, or exchange, but they have to be undercover. So the station will look a lot different, we think, in 5 years from now than it does. And we probably will be using all the land we have and thinking about how else can we expand with supplementary things. So that's just sort of where we are. I don't think I've missed anything major. And it comes down to the thing that always is important to us, and that's the ask.
Next slide.
So
Thanks.
we're hoping that the town council will be able to help us out this year. What we would love to have, if it's possible with the budget, is $5,000 to help us with our operating costs. And half of that would actually come back, or approximately half, in taxes and water tax for the town. And then we would hope that we could find $3,000 to help us with the design of our signage that really needs to go up. It's a major project. We have had help from Rotary, we've had some help from the municipality, and we've had help from the town. So if you can't help us with $8,000, we hope you can help us with something, because it does add up. And we thank you for your support in the past, and I'm hoping in the future. I really think it does add to Middleton. People come, and we're seeing more and more people returning and saying, we'll be back next summer. And that's the sort of thing we love to hear. So thank you very much for your time. I think we went over 15 minutes a little bit, but are there any questions or comments anyone would like to make?
So a question and a comment, and my comment is, I went through in 1987 on the way to Cornwallis on one of those dayliners. So that's my memory of it. Have you gone to any businesses / corporations for donations or support for the Railroad Museum?
Yes, we have. We've had quite a bit of support in the past when we're starting up from CN.
I was thinking more local, like some of the big-
Local, we haven't done things locally because there seems to be a lot of need locally. But we have talked to some foundations. We have been supported by one foundation. I think I can talk about that. The Edie and I forgot his name. Green. Fred Green Foundation. They had the fish market in Halifax. And they have donated substantially to us because of a memory such as yours. He remembers leaving the station, going to Halifax and wondering what his future was going to be when he went in as a young man. And he came back and he sat on the bench before he passed away and said to his daughter, I have wonderful memories of leaving here and it's good to see things happening at the station. They donated $25,000 to us.
Yeah.
So we'd like to find a few more people like that.
50.
Oh, 50, sorry. Yeah, they donated 25. We had the fire. They came to us and said, do you need more money? And of course, the answer was yes. And they rewrote the check for another 25. So it's been 50,000 from them, which is great. We are conscious of the fact, though, that surrounding area businesses are a small pool and everybody needs funds from them. So we're trying not to double up on everything else. But we are.
If I might add, they did come to our rescue when we were raising 25% as equity contributions required by ACOA. This is about 3 years ago. And we have had some corporate sponsorship after that.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so
Thank you very much.
sure.
Any other questions? Yes, Councilor
For the
Swift.
CAO, did we ask for or receive financial statements from the society? That's something I think we're going to be implementing that request.
I don't think we were asked. We certainly can provide that.
It's not in the policy itself, and I'm still working on the application form.
Okay. But that
So
was going to be part of our,
I think so,
requirement.
yeah, or at least outlining what the funds were spent on.
it'd be nice to see how last year went, or where
Yes,
it went,
sure.
where it came from.
Last year, we received $3,000. I should have said this when we were looking at the tool shed. That's where it went. To materials for the tool shed, which will be formally open in the town, invited as you were to the official opening last year. So clearly there'll be recognition for your contribution.
We certainly can provide financials, so we have to do that for
Your charity
Yeah, I think,
purposes.
I think I would like to have that as part of our donation request policy.
If you'd like them this year, they're certainly available. They're in draft form at the moment, because our books are not yet complete, but you're certainly welcome to either this year or last year.
Well, whatever's most up to date, but we're not ready to make decisions yet on those
There we go.
items, so you'll have some time to finish that off.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, just one thing as we close, I'm having one of those magical birthdays. I'm turning 80 in about 10 days' time. And we're doing an open house in my recognition, or whatever you'd say, on the 15th. That's a big word. So if any of you would like to come, you're more than welcome. It's a drop-in, best wishes only, of course, from 1:30 to 3:30 on Sunday the 15th. So if you're curious to come and see the museum, we'd love to have you. We certainly appreciate your worship having been to our official opening back in June. That was quite. And Christmas, yes. You're
I
right.
love that back room.
You're
No, I
a
love that
regular.
back
That's
room.
wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, you guys.
Okay.
Back room.
We'll just
It's
give you a.
beautiful. You need to go see.
I
You
do.
need
I
to
was,
go see.
I was an avid train rider in my university days, so.
Yeah.
Back on Friday night,
When I was in
it's
the,
fantastic.
when I was in the service, it
It
was
was the only way you could travel.
Halifax, it was Halifax.
We need it now.
Thank you.
And
It's too
coming
bad
down
they
here,
took the rails out. Because
coming
Yeah, that was a mistake. They should have left the
Yeah,
rails.
train right to Cornwall base.
I just don't know that, so
I-
I'll send you.
The lines.
All
they're-
the.
you let-
Get off of Cornwall. Phil, sorry.
You think they're reports?
Yeah, don't fall down.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Oh, thank you, very attentive.
Fall asleep or something like that.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for
Thanks for
coming.
the opportunity.
Not so much there in the rest. Says that training came over from performance.
Okay. Anything by citizens
Did not receive anything.
and the ladies in the. Yeah, you don't have any, you're just there listening. Okay. Well, then that makes us move on to section 6.1. RFD 014 twenty 26, title transit budget for 26-27. And I see the CAO's got her name by it, but Meg is here. Is she gonna present?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll present it and then Meg is kind of here for questions.
Okay.
Because I probably can't answer super detailed questions about tidal transit authority. I'm just gonna go over this at a high level. So you have in your packages an RFD before you. The first thing to note, before we get into this is King's Transit Authority is going through a rebranding and renaming to Tidal Transit Authority. I did explain that in the first part of the RFD, but just for those listening. And then the background of this is, just to remind council members, our new Valley Regional Services Agreement that it got approved, last June. Involved the town of Middleton becoming a new partner of King's Transit, of which we were not before Tidal Transit. I'm probably gonna say King's Transit. And we were already a partner of Valley Waste. So as a partner of Tidal Transit Authority, the town of Middleton obviously provides residents with access to safe and reliable and affordable public transit within the region. And then one of the changes in the new Valley Regional Services Agreement, which is an intermunicipal services agreement with our other partners, is that the budgets no longer come to the councils for approval. They get approved by the board, on which our mayor is a representative and has a vote at the table. So the Valley Waste budget was already presented in January and it was passed by the board. And I've attached it here for council's information. It does represent a decrease from prior year, which is why it didn't really come back to council like this one is kind of coming back to you. Because it was palatable by the CAO working group and the Valley Regional Services Board. The Tidal Transit budget, however, has had some challenges. So the CAOs of all the parties to the intermunicipal services agreement have met, I'll say several times on this to try to come up with Meg, and the Director of Finance, Dan LeBay, to try to come up with a reasonable budget, I guess, that we think will, be approved by the board and that is fair, to all municipal units. So there have been some challenges that are highlighted in the report that I attached, written by Meg, that have led to some budget pressures and increases on both the operating and capital side. So there's a summary there attached to the RFD that kind of gives a detailed description of each of the budget increases and why. So because there are significant increases, the CEO working group decided that this should come back to each council, so that the mayor can receive direction from council on how she should vote at the Valley Regional Services Board meeting. And we do expect that this will take place, I think, this month, after we have our council meeting. So under the financial implications section, I did highlight some of the changes. So as a reminder, when we joined Tidal Transit this year in 25-26, the other parties to the agreement were kind enough to allow us to enter this agreement on a phased funding approach, which was very good for us. So in year one, we contributed 50% of what our total share should have been, knowing that in 26, 27, we would move to full participation or 100%. So in our budget for this year, it was about $55,000 in operating and just over 2,000 in capital. So we already knew when we approved the budget for 25, 26 that we'd be looking at approximately 110,000 for operating in 26, 27 and about 5 for capital for a total of 115,000. So because of the financial pressures currently facing Tidal Transit, the proposed 26, 27 budget reflects an operating contribution for us of 132,000 and a capital contribution of almost 12. So that's an increase of approximately 30,000 above what we originally thought we would have in our 26, 27 budget based on the 25, 26 projections. However, I do want to point out that the Valley Waste budget does have savings of approximately 35,000. So if you look at these two contracts and agreements together, they do net out, which is positive, very positive for us this year. And Meg and Dan have been working really hard to try to come up with a Tidal Transit budget that is palatable, given all the financial pressures that they're facing. So what it would mean for the town of Middleton if we vote in favor of this via the mayor at the Valley Regional Services meeting is that the impact on our budget would be the same roughly as what we were expecting it to be for this year. Even though it's a large increase for Tidal Transit, it's offset by the Valley Waste savings. So the alternative is that council could direct the mayor to vote against the budget. I just have that there. And then I'm not gonna go over the budget summary. I attached it to the RFD. All those pressures are kind of outlined there. But at this point in time, I think we do need a motion on the floor first, and then for discussion and questions, Meg is obviously here and available and can speak to things in a lot more detail than what I can.
Make the motion that the council direct the mayor to vote in favor of Tidal Transit Authority 26, 27 operating and capital budgets when it comes before the Valley Regional Service Board.
Second. Discussion. Councilor Archibald.
I have 2 pages of notes on this. First, the fact that one entity was able to manage their budget does not mean that's available for another entity. That's, in my opinion, that's a non-starter. In reading the proposal, the word ambitious got mentioned numerous times. At no point would the word prudent, responsible, accountable, or frugal ever mentioned. When we signed on to this, we did sign on to a blank check, and even at the time, it was going to stretch our budgets. I don't think it's reasonable to ask us to cough up another $30,000, given our own budgetary constraints. And as far as the savings that we can come from Valley Waste, we've got multiple proposals ahead of us that money could go to work in this community as well. And you can pick apart the lines and budgets that are there for heated stations down in Cornwallis and other things all over the place. Perhaps they could be a little less ambitious and a little more frugal with their taxpayers' money that they give, is my opinion on that.
Thank you. Any others? Councilor Smith.
I've got a couple of thoughts here. I somewhat echo Councilor Archibald's thoughts. Just because Peter is giving us a little gift doesn't mean Paul should get to spend it right away. We don't know the entirety of our budget this year, where we stand, what other pressures we're going to incur. I don't think we're even in a position to be able to say today that we should approve this piece of our budget without seeing the entirety of our budget. Because if we say we're gonna have a nil effect. Nil effects, I understand, but we're not gonna have a nil effect across the board. We've got a number of other issues within the town that are going to be drains. I think, we need to have a better grasp of our entire picture before we start approving bits and pieces of our budget. This is how we get ourselves in trouble when we're in January, early February, saying, okay, we're gonna approve this little piece, we're gonna approve this little piece. Well, we've gotten to May, June, and July before we actually finalize our budget with very little wiggle room at that time. Because we've already approved bits and pieces that added up to 90% of our budget. We are a small player in this project, these two projects, I understand that. But we're talking big dollars on it when it comes to the entirety of our budget. Secondly, we've asked this before. We have no real ridership data that we can go to the citizens of Middleton and say, this is what this particular service is doing for us. We don't know how many people are getting on the bus. We don't know how many people are getting off the bus. Pardon?
Yes. Celia.
We do have that, so I believe that
Okay,
was.
we don't have that.
Yep, I emailed it out, it was a request, that council had, back last year, and it got circulated from Meg
Last year.
within the past year.
I don't
June.
recall.
I'm
Yep.
sorry,
It was something that council asked for and it was circulated. I'll
we
try to
don't
find
have
it.
any updated usage figures then, how's that? We were skeptical, well, I won't say we were skeptical, I think we were railroaded into this, joining this particular. Organization as a member. With very little prep and information last year when we dealt with this. It was a multi-council joint meeting. And I was not comfortable at the time, I probably should have said more. We've gone from a $57,000 budget last year to $150 some odd $1,000 budget this year. Where are we getting that $80,000, $90,000, $100,000? We don't know yet. And I don't know how we're going to say yes to this without knowing our entire picture. The one final comment was, we were told last year we had to join this as a owner participant, that there would be no service offered to Middleton otherwise. The town of Annapolis Royal has a bus going through it. They pay $1,000 a month to the county of Annapolis, it's in their budget. How did they get away with not being a founding member or a ownership member to this organization? And we got strong-armed into doing it.
Yes. go on.
So I can recirculate the RFDs from last year, but we had multiple cameras about this. And in my opinion, nobody was strong-armed into anything. It was very clearly laid out that it would be a risk if we did not become a partner, that we potentially could lose transit if the county was no longer willing to let us have transit for the $25,000 a year. Annapolis Royal chose to take that risk, and that was their council's decision. But to clarify, nobody was told that the town was going to lose King's Transit if we didn't sign on to the agreement, but it was highlighted as a risk that we could.
We didn't have multiple in-camera meetings. I'm sorry to disagree with you. We had a presentation about a week prior to our joint council session that gave us the basic information. I'm not happy with this at all. I don't know what's it gonna look like again next year. I mean, we've gone from $55,000 to $150,000 to what? And we're perpetually tied to this now? That's all I have to say about it.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a quick question. So last year as well, town of Digby decided not to run transit, how much of a loss was it for them not to come on board, and is some of this budget a result of that loss? Because they paid in, Digby paid into the transit service, and they now don't have bus service there. They chose not to. So I guess my question is, how much did, I'm gonna say Kings as well, but I don't, lose from Digby not, coming on board?
Can you answer that, Meg?
Yeah, so the Digby, town of Digby contribution would have been just under $100,000 a year. So for a $4 million operating budget, it's a kind of a drop in the hat, a drop in the bucket overall. And that was shared across all of the units. So the impact to the smaller members like Berwick and Middleton was fairly unnoticed.
Any other questions?
If I could, there were. Oh, just the one question about what will this look like next year? In the discussion paper that I had put out, and maybe there is a 5-year forecast that we created that goes into what the operating grants and the capital grants would look like over the next 5 years. And there's lots of exciting things that are coming along with King's Transit, but there are lots of pains that we need to come out of. And so although the word ambitious was used, it's also very prudent, and it's also very mindful of what the capital requirements are and what the operational requirements are to create a service that is both reliable and connected without expanding in any way, shape, or form. So over the next 5 years, while we buy new buses that are majorly subsidized and funded through the provincial and federal government, we will see operating decreases when we are able to have reliable buses that don't break down all the time. So we won't need to have as many mechanics, and we won't need to have $500,000 worth of inventory in parts because we have obsolete and dilapidated buses that we can't find parts for anymore. We will see substantial fuel savings moving into hybrid electric buses instead of diesel buses purely. Most authorities and properties across North America that are using hybrids are seeing a 30% decrease in their diesel use, which would be huge for us. Just to put it into context, we have been operating with only 6 buses on the road instead of 7 that we normally operate with, because our fleet is in such poor shape right now. And the fuel savings alone for not having that one bus on the road has been nearing $40,000. So the fuel costs alone are substantial for our budget. It's almost a quarter of the entire thing. We get a quarter of our income almost from ridership and through revenue and fares, and the other 3/4 comes from the municipal contributions. So some of the pain that we've incurred over the years is that the capital contribution from the municipal owners has only been $80,000 a year, and a bus is $1 million. So an engine job that was just approved by the board to have a new engine put into one of our 2011 buses that has almost 2 million kilometers on it was $80,000. So our capital contributions that we've had have not let us keep pace to be a prudent or financially sound organization, and we need to reinvest and build into King's Transit at the moment. Our mechanics are wizards, and they're very creative, and they pinch pennies, and we do everything that we can to run a very lean machine. There's just not much left in terms of lean. We're skeletal, and we're in a rebuild phase. But with this rebuild comes stability and comes operational savings in time. And so that 5-year capital budget and the 5-year operating budget that we've tried to forecast represents how we have a huge capital lift ahead of us, buying 7 hybrid buses in the next 2 years, and then recapitalizing all of our other buses right now. But we will see operational savings in that, and we will be able to be a more prudent and affordable and sustainable organization once we have stabilized ourselves, but it's a pretty desperate situation at the moment, and it's just a matter of getting rebuilt and never being in this position again.
Thanks, Mike. Yes, Councilor Smith.
I appreciate that. Um. But you can see our frustration when we were the new kid on the block. And all of a sudden the costs are going up much higher to what we were initially told that they would be when we signed up. Additionally, the numbers stabilize over the next 5 years, but they don't dramatically decrease with the efficiency of these new buses, which I presume are calculated into this 5-year forecast. We're going to what? Town of Middleton. Our budget for operating budget for 26-27 is 133,000, 135,000, down to 126, up to 127, and up to 130. So it stabilizes, but at that higher amount. So we're never coming back down to what we initially, I won't say we're promised, but what's the indicators of what we would be paying when we first signed on. Same way on the capital side, you know, we were gonna kick in a couple of $1,000s and up to $5,000, I think, in our first full year. Well, we're double that plus in each of those capital years. So we're not seeing a drop off or a return of the efficiencies that you say that these hybrid buses are going to provide us. And their forecasts. So if it's gonna be something else, we're a small town. This is a big cost. This is more than half a police officer, if you wanna equate it to something else that we're struggling with in this town. I appreciate, and I'm not doubting that you guys are doing everything you can. I'm just worried that this is a project that the town of Middleton can't afford. And that's the last I need to say, though. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Just, how certain are you of your numbers in your forecast?
Everything in the future is unpredictable. We are in unbelievably uncertain times, and it's based on what we can see now and what has happened in the last few years. But a war could break out.
Well,
Prices could increase, all of the things like tariffs, those impacts. It's very challenging to know what could happen in the future in that sense, but knowing that there are Canadian manufacturers for buses, knowing that there are efficiencies that are being seen by other fleets that are implementing this kind of technology, knowing that we can't attract new ridership to this system if people only think of King's Transit as unreliable, constantly breaking down, can't get you where you're going, never shows up on time. All of those pieces of the project are just as important as the physical buses. It's the redesigning of the schedule. It's the making sure we're on time so that people start to trust and believe in King's Transit and choose to ride on it again. But it requires those investments in being sustained, being reliable, being frequent, and
barring a war and all this kind of thing.
Sure.
What I'm getting at is the blank check situation, that we basically, these are wonderful numbers, but they could be 170, 180, 200,000 within 5 years. And that's beyond our capacity.
Discuss on that.
My question is if we say no to this agreement, we said yes to the agreement last year. What happens if we say no? Are we out of the agreement? Can we leave the agreement? Can we not leave the agreement? Are we obligated to do this? What was in that agreement?
So the RFD on the floor and the motion on the floor is regarding the budget, not the agreement. So like we're a party of the King's Transit, Tidal Transit agreement.
Right, but in that
So-
agreement, these monies are in this agreement. So if we say
Well-
no to this monies,
We're gonna be outvoted
We're gonna be approved, yeah.
Potentially, yeah.
by the 7 or 8 members. By the 7-member group.
Yeah.
We're such a small player that we're gonna be a vote.
so we're gonna have to pay it anyway.
Right,
Well, no, we can just say we don't want. that we don't
No,
want to
We have to give notice.
We have to get
can't-
notice, we can't run, but
And.
Right, so you would still have to pay for
And-
the year anyway.
And the CAOs were asked to like sensitize this. That's why we're coming here to get a feel for what the councils think, and then we're all gonna get back together and talk about it. So other councils might have the same opinion as this one.
So unless
Yes,
the
ma'am.
majority of the councils say, go back and sharpen your pencils in some way, shape or form, or however, whatever that looks like. I'm not a busing expert. Then, yeah,
yes, Meg.
So just to the question of what's, I have been a municipal councillor. I have been in your shoes. I've had to do these conversations and dig in and have these uncomfortable moments. And I will not do this to you again in the next 5 years. I will keep it at this level. I will not ask for more capital. I understand this is a pinch point. This is a painful place. But I have spent the majority of my council career working on King's Transit, and I have spent the majority of this year trying to figure out ways to do this work within a pocket that can remain sustainable for what the towns and the municipalities are looking for. I have no plans of going anywhere. I would love to be buried in a bus. Like, this is my dream job. This is the dream thing that I want to work on, and I understand that this is a painful thing to have a huge ask put upon you. So it is not done without understanding that need, and I would never be comfortable in the next 5 years to come to you with another huge increase like this. We can get a lot done with what has been presented here. And we can really stabilize King's Transit to be something that is useful and reliable without breaking further than the bank. There was a lot more that I initially put into the CAOs that they all said, whoa, girl, settle down. And this is the very pared back version of that. And your CAOs have been incredibly helpful, and they have voiced your concerns, and they have made all of these issues well known to our team. And so we've tried to really pull back and make this as reasonable for what we need to get done to really make sure that King's Transit can survive and be a service that people choose, but also respecting the fact that everyone has limited resources right now, and it's a very difficult time to make things happen in Nova Scotia, Canada. So all of that is to say, I'm not going to try to come out with another exciting, huge increase at any time. I will do my very best with our team to stay within this range, and I will, you can hold me to that.
Thanks, Mike. Yes, Councilor Russell.
I noticed in your proposal, there's a number of financing lines that are coming in from the federal government particularly, but also some from the provincial government. How confident are you on those revenue streams? Are they locked in, or are they based on a kind of an estimate of what you're going to get? I just anticipate budget tightening in both provincial and federal things. So if that money goes away, then you're going to have to come back to us for more.
Sure. So that's a really great question, and it is entirely apropos. So if I were to go through the external funding programs that we have, Innovation Canada, so ISIP, that's locked in, that's not going anywhere. Rural Transit Solutions Fund, that's locked in, that's not going anywhere. Rural Transit Solutions Fund for our building, locked in, not going anywhere. The Rural Transit Solutions Fund baseline funding is one that is locked in, but has to have matching contributions. So unless the municipalities in the province can come up with those matching pieces, there's a potential of us leaving money on the table from the federal government. That's $500,000 a year over the next 10 years for capital programs. So that's 40% funded. We need to find the other 60% to make that funding available to us. So that's the increasing the capital grants from the municipalities from the 80 to the 320,000. But I'm also working right now with the province of Nova Scotia on our PTAP funding. So the PTAP is the last option here, is the Public Transit Assistance Fund. And that program is not guaranteed right now. So historically, for the last 15 years, King's Transit has received $375,000 from that program that we apply for every year. So it's not guaranteed, but it's never changed. But It's again, never guaranteed. So I am in conversations with the province right now through the Department of Transportation and through Link Nova Scotia to secure a 10-year funding agreement with them that would at least lock in that 375. It's not an increase, unfortunately, which would be my preference. But to have it locked in, at least that funding is not going anywhere for 10 years, would put us all in a very stable position, and they're very open to doing that with the other transit authorities in the province. So that is the wobbliest pillar, and I think we have a solution coming on that. But everything else is locked in.
Okay. Are we ready to vote? All those in favor? All those against?
Yeah,
Okay. Would you like your names put down?
sure. And I don't think we're saying no to transit. I think we just want to see one last desperate efforts to sharpen the pencil. That's where I'm coming from. I won't speak for anybody.
I would also like to see the impact on our own budget.
Yeah.
Before,
Right.
Yeah.
Our big picture.
And I'm not sure what the timing of when these budgets, I was trying to look up the agreement. I don't know if you know off the top of your head, Meg, but when do these budgets have to be passed?
Technically, it's a December timeline, a December deadline, but because we were doing the consultations with the CAOs and because we've gone back and sharpened our pencils quite a few times, that put us into February, which is why we didn't hit the Valley Wastes timeline for January. But we did part of it in December. Yeah.
Cause ideally this would get approved before we start our budget process so that we can have final numbers for our budget process. But like our budget timeline that we submitted last time, like we're not gonna have draft budget in front of council until March 2nd. So,
We've got to try to figure out a way to more closely align that stuff so that we have a better sense of our big picture.
Yeah.
Knowing that our sub-organizations all need to get going as well. And I don't have a magic answer for that. But that ideally, that would make our jobs a heck of a lot easier.
Okay, and motion defeated. All right. 6.2. 6.3, RFD 01-010-2026, appointment list update, CAO.
I think we got
Oh, I'm
6.2.
sorry.
6.2.
Oh,
Just an agreement between Remo and
and
Transit.
King's Transit.
sure they're not gonna wanna.
RFD 09-2026.
Off the table.
thank you. So this RFD, comes at the recommendation of the Annapolis Regional Emergency Management Organization Committee, or Annapolis Remo. And so it is just a draft, memorandum of agreement or MOA between Tidal, King's Transit Authority and Annapolis Remo. In the event that there's an emergency, the agreement basically states that if we could use buses to help with an emergency, King's Transit will be there for us. And that's formalized through the memorandum of understanding. So that is there and the draft agreement is there and as I said, the Annapolis Remo Advisory Committee will need a motion that all the councils recommend to approve this.
I'll move the council approve the memorandum of agreement between King's Transit Authority and the Annapolis Regional Emergency Management Organization, Annapolis Remo, as recommended by the Annapolis Remo Advisory Committee.
Discussion?
We have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. 010-2026 appointment list update.
Thank you, Mayor. So there's a couple changes that we made to the appointment list that are outlined in the RFD. The biggest, I guess, note that needs a recommendation and motion from council is that we had a vacancy on our audit committee and two individuals, both town residents, applied.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Two individuals applied, for the vacancy on the committee. And staff reviewed both applications. One had a resume attached, the other one did not. And staff are recommending that council appoint Daniel Forbes as a member of the audit committee. He currently works for the CBDC or the Community Business Development Corporation in Annapolis Ventures. So in his current role, he analyzes financial statements and has developed a good understanding of accounting. So that's why we think he has more specific experience that relates directly to the audit committee.
Former bank manager.
So there's two motions there, one to appoint an audit committee member, and then the second to approve the updated appointment list.
I move council on the recommendation from the CAO appoint Daniel Forbes as member of the audit committee.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion carried.
I also move the council approve the 2026 appointment list as presented.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. 6.4 RFP 011 2026 Joint Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Accessibility Idea Plan, CAO.
Thank you. So this RFD, there's two here tonight. So the first one deals with equity, diversity, and inclusion plan. And then the second RFD deals with a joint accessibility plan. So the background here is that the province of Nova Scotia did introduce new legislation recently. And all municipal units are mandated to submit an equity, diversity, and inclusion plan. So town, in collaboration with the Village of Lordstown, the town of Annapolis Royal, and the county of Annapolis, formed a committee called the IDEA Committee, or the Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Accessibility Committee. And that committee did some community engagement, which is described in the RFP at the bottom. And in terms of reference was created, and one of the first initiatives that the committee was given was to develop these two plans in collaboration with staff and the community. So the plan is attached, it's in draft form. I do believe both the town of Annapolis Royal and the county of Annapolis have already approved the plan. Each council, I think, had some very minor, small changes, and we're all gonna submit the plans individually. But the idea is that they're joint plans. So financial implications, none directly, but if there's activities required for equity, diversity, inclusion, we will have to potentially set a budget aside for that. The committee can recommend that we do things, but it would be up to each municipal council to decide whether we're gonna do it or not. The town already does some not expensive initiatives like our flag raising ceremonies as an example, and we participate in Accessibility Day and do some different things. So so far the committee has been working on this. So now the next step will be to kind of dive into the plans and actually start making tangible recommendations to the municipal units on how we can improve inclusion, diversity, and equity in our communities. And yeah, just a note at the bottom of the RFD that there was community engagement and consultation done. So there was 5 public sessions, focus groups, surveys, one-on-one conversations with residents that kind of fed into this overall plan. That's it.
Okay. Is there,
I move to approve the 2026 to 2029 equity, diversion, and inclusion EDI plan.
No, second.
discussion?
I just have a question.
Yes.
as we, the town of Middleton, are we going to wait for recommendations from this joint committee to do any accessibility things or inclusionary things on our own, or is that just a separate discussion at budget time? And I'll get to a specific. When I was on the town of Middleton accessibility committee, we had passed a couple of things. I think putting the counter lower in the downstairs was one of them. Changing the doorknobs, I believe, was one of them. But the third one was creating some accessible parking spots. One out in front of my building, where my business is on Commercial Street, and that never got done once we switched over to the idea version of this committee. So does that project just disappear or wait for re-recommendation from the joint committee, or is that, how do we work within that?
So my understanding is that each municipal unit can, and council can kind of do what we want with respect to us, like this RFD is specific to equity, diversity, inclusion, accessibility is the next one.
I know, probably jumped the gun a little bit, but that was my example.
But we can do, I wanna say what we want, but if there's an initiative that council wants to do, or that staff wants to do, we can absolutely do it as long as it's within our budget. But on top of that, you know, we now have a committee of representatives of this community that we can lean on for advice on how we should do things or what specifically we should do or not do, to help us do things better. And they may make recommendations to all of the municipal units that aren't budgetarily feasible, and we have to say no, but we're gonna keep doing, I think, what we've always done, and then when recommendations come forward from that committee, I think they'll come back to, like, staff are part of those meetings, myself and our Empower coordinator. If we think there's something like that we want to do, that we need council to approve because we might need extra budget for it, then it'll come back to council. The parking spot, I do recall that, and it didn't have anything to do with us switching over necessarily. I just need to follow up with the director of public works on that, because I believe he looked into it. And if I remember correctly, we thought it was gonna be an easy thing to do, and then it wasn't, but I don't really remember why, so I'll have to follow up with him and see. If he can dig out what happened with that, and not saying we can't do it, but we were gung ho to do it because I think we thought it was gonna be easier than it was, and he ran into some challenges, so.
So I'm gonna take a page out of our missing deputy mayor's spiel and talk directly to the listening public. And let them know that if there's any projects that they want done within the town that covers inclusion and diversity and accessibility, they should be letting us know very, very soon, as we are about to cover off our budget deliberations. And if there's a monetary cost to any of those projects, we need to know about sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Okay. Question? Questions? There's no motion. Okay.
We already did.
Oh, she's called, that's what, okay.
That'd be more dynamic with that. Remember, or you weren't at the UNSM or whatever we call it nowadays, when they were quite forceful with their question.
Yes, all right. Okay. Motion, please.
We already did that.
Oh, the motion's on, oh,
Question.
sorry. Got it, all right. All those in favor? Against? Motion carried.
Hockey game doesn't start for another 7 minutes.
Well, I think you're gonna miss it. Or something anyway. Okay, so. And the joint accessibility plan, like, is coming forward.
It's on Prime.
Yes, so, the next RFD is with regards to the joint accessibility plan, so that does have different legislation, it's not new legislation that we're required to submit an updated accessibility plan. That came out, early in 2017, and the town submitted their first plan in 2022. So this, very similarly to the other presentation, was developed in the very same manner. We just discussed at the idea committee between the committee and staff that it would be better to have two separate plans instead of one covering them all. So that's why two different plans were created. And then everything that I believe I presented before is very similar to this one with one small change. The accessibility plan has a bunch of appendices attached to it, and each municipal unit has its own appendix. And so I just want to make it clear, it's in the RFD, but just want to say it again, that by approving this plan, we don't approve the other municipalities' appendices, we're approving the plan and our appendix.
I move council approve the Annapolis County Joint Accessibility Plan for 2026-2028 and submit to the NS Accessibility Direct Date as the approved plan to guide actions over the next 3 years.
Second that.
Question? Not the question. Discussion? No. Okay. All those in favor? Against? Motion carried. 6.6, RFD 015-2026, Annapolis Valley Regional Library Budget Request, CAO.
Thank you, Mayor. So the CEO of the Annapolis Valley Regional Library Board has presented to this council at least a couple of times now over the past year. And I think council should be aware of some of the challenges that the library board has been having based on some correspondence I've attached in past, to past meetings and, through their CEO, Julia Merritt. But we did receive specifically a budget request from them that I wanted to get before council sooner rather than later. And it's attached to the RFD. So the library board is basically requesting an increase to their budget. And it is unclear at this time whether the province will increase their portion of the funding. So the library model, the funding model that exists right now within Nova Scotia is approximately 70% to 71% of the operating budgets for our library board is covered by the province. Participating municipal units cover the other 26%, and then the library board itself covers 3%. So you'll see in the attached documents that the library board here in the Valley hasn't received an increase in quite some time, and costs are going up. As a result, over the past 5 years, to try to address the financial challenges, a lot of services have been either removed completely or diminished, I'll say. And they are at a point in time where they're drawing money from an operating reserve in order to balance their budget. And they will have to do that for 25-26 and in 26-27. So in order to try to, I think the CEO would like some direction from the province and municipal units on what level of service everybody wants and expects from libraries, because libraries have become a bit more than what you would think they would deliver as a service. So for example, during COVID, they were a major touch point for COVID tests and things like that. So they're doing services that I don't think many people realize. So the increase that they're asking for is a 50% increase. And right now the request is coming to us because we haven't passed our budgets and the province has not said yes or no, to my understanding. And for us, a 50% increase would be an additional $6,000. So right now we've been contributing $12,300 per year to the library funding model. So an extra 50% would be $6,150 for a total of $18,450. I did lay out a few different options, and I'll be honest, this was probably one of the most challenging RFDs I've had to write since I've been here, because it was very difficult just as staff to try to recommend something to council, like what's right. So There's a few different options there, and I did highlight in one section of the RFD some of the risks if council decides to approve the full funding increase without a provincial contribution. There's some risks there. It may create an expectation that municipalities will fund future increases if the province doesn't step up. Again, we don't know that they're not going to fund the increase. We just haven't heard a yes or no at this point. And then obviously we're in a situation where multiple municipal units in the valley contribute to the Annapolis Valley Regional Library Board and funding models. So there's also the risk, I guess, that some councils might approve the full increase, some councils might approve a partial increase, some councils might not approve anything. And then we're gonna be in a situation where nothing's consistent. So the CAOs have had several meetings on this. And there was a meeting that the mayor attended last week or the week before where Julia Merritt, the CEO, did present in quite a bit of detail the situation that they're in. So what I came up with that I thought is reasonable and shows that the town supports the library, but also doesn't want to open ourselves up to funding the full increase, because I'm not really sure what tone that sets moving forward. My suggestion is that we approve our share of the increase, so not the full, but what our share would be, which is the 26%. And have that be subject to provincial confirmation of their share. So that would mean an additional $1,600 to our budget, which is minimal. It's not a huge increase for us. We can certainly make that work in our draft budget. The 6 I would have to go look at if council wants to contemplate that option. The other option is that are down below, so there's a couple alternatives there. So council could choose to not approve anything tonight or decline the increase. They could approve the full increase and make it conditional that the province kicks in their share, or approve the full increase on a one-time basis so that the library knows that this is not gonna necessarily be a given next year. So I think I've laid out what I can with respect to considerations and how the funding model works right now. The fact that we're not really sure if the province is going to increase their funding. What we do know is that the province has been very open that they have a deficit right now with their budget.
Yep.
So they have their own challenges. So I think reading between the lines, it doesn't look super likely that they might be able to come up with additional funding for libraries, but that's not confirmed at all. We just simply haven't heard a yes or no from them, and neither has the library board. So the funding model's there, some alternatives are there, and again, I'm recommending that council approve our portion of the funding increase based on the current cost sharing model to show our support of the library, but make it subject to provincial confirmation of their share.
Thanks, Dave.
I move council approve the $1,600 funding increase to the Annapolis Valley Regional Library Board, which is consistent with the traditional municipal share under the current cost sharing model, subject to provincial confirmation of their share.
Second.
Discussion?
You wanna go first?
No, you were.
I think you nailed it in your risks if council approves the full funding increase without provincial contribution. I think you could also say those same risks exist if we approve a partial increase in the funding. I'm not comfortable giving them any more money at this time without knowing what the province is going to do, or what the other funding partners are going, the municipal funding partners are going to do. I'm surprised that the library hasn't been absorbed into this intermunicipal service group thing, because it's kind of a similar type of.
It's because it's already adjusted the Libraries Act. So there's no intermunicipal agreement because there's already legislation that mandates our contribution.
Fair enough. Is there a way, though, that we can get our municipal brethren to discuss and agree before, as a group, before we can have to, I'm not necessarily saying for this year, I'm thinking bigger picture. Because this is one of the things, as you said, well, if we approve an increase, Berwick doesn't, and I'm not picking on Berwick, don't throw rocks at me from Berwick. But it would create an unequal contribution, to our library situation, and I think we all want to play together. I don't think we should be funding any increase until we know what all the other players are doing, especially in the province. And if it's going to result in service cuts, then the people themselves, the residents of our communities, are going to have to yell at the province and say, you're taking away story time for my kids, or the summer reading program, or whatever it is that's getting removed, and put that pressure on them. Again, we're approving a piece of our budget without seeing the entirety of our budget, which I'm not a fan of, as we all know. I still think this is the time to make this motion approved.
So to clarify, the way that I structured the motion was that we actually wouldn't give the library the $1,600 funding increase unless the province confirms that they're gonna put forward their share. That's what's subject to
What's the
provincial.
definition of their share?
It would be the other, based on the funding model, so like.
But
it
they
would
haven't
be-
increased their funding model in 10 years or whatever.
That's right,
Right.
so if they don't, then this town would not be obligated to pay the increase. That's how the motion reads.
I know that. But I just think that it doesn't have to be that complicated. I think we just don't do it until we see what the province does.
The only thing
Yeah.
I'll say is
Yeah.
that it puts the library in a difficult position because they've
does.
got two funding partners that are both waiting on the other potentially.
The province is not
And-
waiting for us. Sorry for interrupting, but the province is certainly not waiting for us.
Possibly not, but I guess another reason I put this forward was like to show some good faith that the town supports the library, and if it becomes known that some municipal units or all municipal units have motions structured similar to this, then potentially the library could use that to have conversations with the province to say, hey, the municipalities have made motions, they're going to support the increase. Can you please support it too? It gives them maybe a little bit more oomph, without committing the town to this unless they put in their share.
I understand, sorry, did you wanna jump in there?
Go
But what if only 2 municipalities go forward with it and the rest wait or say no or whatever? Right, that's why I was saying that we need to get all the municipalities together on this and say, yes, okay, we're prepared. If this motion was replicated exactly by all of the other municipal funding partners, saying subject to the province coming up with their increased percentage, I'd have no problem with that. But I don't wanna commit us to more money, province comes up with more money, but Kentville and Berwick and the other places don't. That's not fair.
So point taken, so council could amend the motion to say subject to provincial confirmation of their share and other municipal confirmation of their respective shares.
All other, or how do we? What's our expectation? And I'm asking, I'm not telling.
Well, this was talked about at the
Yeah.
meeting that we attended. It was talked about that should we get all the councils together and decide how to move forward with this? But it was basically left with us each to go back to their own councils to figure out what they're comfortable doing. And this is just a recommendation at the committee of the whole as well, so you, council could direct staff to go back and get more information or ask for meetings or something before our February council meeting, but again, I do think that someone has to step up, and that could be us, like, to be, you know, the municipal unit that steps up and says, we support the library, this is our motion, and then maybe the other municipal units will
I have one final question, if I could.
Yes, sir.
The money that we contribute doesn't necessarily only get spent at the Rosa Park,
Rosa Hardy.
Rosa Harvey, sorry. The Rosa Harvey Library here in Middleton. It just goes into the pot and gets spent throughout the valley.
And the same is said for Annapolis County, so the county of Annapolis, their contribution, they actually do contribute based on our library there
Right.
as well.
Yes, Bert.
Do they know now? Councilor Knapp? They know when to expect to hear back from the governments, like, is it gonna be by the end of February, the end of March?
The last email I saw as early as Friday or today was that Julie had sent out an email saying that they may be sending a letter to the province.
To the bro,
Yeah.
but never heard nothing, but they don't speculate when they might hear back on that funding.
No, and they're in a situation that they have to know what they're doing April 1st, like, they need to know what operationally they're doing, they have, I think they have a union, it's in there. They have wage increase, mandatory wage increases, there's certain things that they can't not do.
Yeah.
Right, so they either need more money or they're gonna start shutting some things down, whether that be services or branches, I don't know.
There's 11
But-
branches in Annapolis. So if they can't afford 11, there may only be 8. And then they may be done strategically.
So,
Yes, Councilor.
I'm not any kind of accountant or can read financials like maybe some of the other people around the table, but when you have a income of 2.991 for the 25 to, so let's go to the 26, 27, so 2.825. But your wages are 2.532. I think they really need to at some point consider tightening up something.
They already have, it's in, like, it's been in all their presentations, they've cut their staff by like 50%. And
But-
all of their employees are making less than any other library board across the province. So it's very challenging, like, the libraries are very similar to municipal units in that we're a very service delivery organization. So like, a lot of our expenses are salaries too, because we deliver services and that's what they do.
And even going through this, I mean, the budget is not, I mean, it doesn't allow for any. A lot of their expenses don't allow for any change, like, there's no change in. Some of it's very little, that I don't know if it's realistic. I expect their budget's gonna. You know, just through cost of living or just through the regular increase in cost of things. Again, I'm not a pro of reading this, but. You know, to me, it looks like they're projecting already, is that how?
Well-
Definite, they're projecting a $528,000 loss at this budget, the way it's.
Yes.
With
that's-
no increases from the municipality.
Correct.
With no increase
So,
from municipalities.
With no increases from municipalities, they're budgeting a $530,000 deficit. I don't even think they have that amount in reserves. That's where they're at.
And when I look at it, I don't see realistic cost increase. I mean, when I budget for, you know, my pub or something, I look at, you know, my expenses and think, okay, You know, they've gone up 2 or 3% and many of them don't show any increases at
Or like
all.
insurance as an
Yeah,
example,
yeah.
it's an
Yeah,
Yeah.
insurance
So-
probably will go up.
They're actually projecting wages. Oh, I'm sorry, never mind.
yeah, wages are up.
Wages are up slightly, and I think that is explained in the,
Yeah,
in the,
They're off.
I mean, I agree that it kind of that, you know, the $1,600 is kind of, you know, if that's gonna get other councils to approve a higher budget for the library, then, you know, I'm all right with that, and it doesn't tie us in unless the government comes in with their, with a portion of the funding, and I'm fine with that, but I also think their financials
it's
and their
not-
projections just don't seem very realistic to me. I expect that we're gonna see a lot more expense than what's there. And again, I'm not a professional in any of this, just how I read it.
Oh, yes, Councillor Flannery.
Can we take option 3, which is to defer, decline the increase until we get more information? If the CAO can get more information from the other municipalities and see what they're doing?
you can, but that would. Show council's intent to not kind of play ball, in my opinion,
If it's gathering information,
but. You can still direct me to go gather some information so that you have more information at council
yeah,
if you
to make a
like.
decision, yeah.
But you can still do that with the current recommendation or the other two. Because just because committee of the whole makes a recommendation doesn't mean council has to approve it. It could get defeated at council and then you could choose option 1, 2, or 3, or amend it to be different. I do have Julia scheduled in. She wasn't able to attend tonight, but I do have her scheduled in to come to council on February 17th if you have specific questions like about the budget. Or about the reality of the situation that I don't know if I did a good job conveying the reality of the situation. She had a really good presentation that we attended. And then
Oh, sorry.
the only other thing I was gonna say was, what they're asking for, also to be clear. For this additional 50% that they're asking us for, doesn't even get them out of a deficit position. It still leaves them in a deficit position, but at least one that can be funded by their operating reserve. So it's really just a stopgap for this year, so that there's more time to figure out what to do moving forward.
Yeah, assuming we approve this tonight, is it possible for you to reach out to, because again, this won't, us approving this committee of the whole doesn't mean it gets approved to council, which is 2 weeks from now. Between then and now, could you possibly reach out to the other councils and see what their intent is?
Yeah.
Letting them know, this is where we go, this is our thoughts. Are you guys on board? Which might give council a bit of better direction, when it comes time to do the actual vote. The other thing I would reach out, because Councillor Bartlett makes a pretty point, that's a fairly terminal situation they have there. Do they have a plan? Because one thing to buy them perhaps a year, but do they have a plan that will return them to some point of viability, whether that is somehow discovering new revenues and rot leprechauns type thing, or whether or not it's going to be cuts to various library services or branches or something like that. So we have a clearer picture of where the library system as a whole is destined in the next 5 years. It's one thing to plug a hole in a dike, but if it's a tidal wave coming over the dike, it's not gonna help.
So they have, if I may, sorry.
Yes.
So they have struck a committee to do just that, and the committee has come up with, I think 4 strategic recommendations. But what they're waiting for right now is they need input from municipal units and the province on what level of service are you okay with, because status quo is not sustainable, like that's a given.
Yeah.
So they need to know if there's gonna be funding increases, and if there's not, okay, then what services are you okay with us reducing or eliminating completely so that we can still survive?
Right.
Basically, so they have struck a committee to do that, and they do have recommendations and reports. But they need some input from provincial and municipal partners.
So if I may ask, sorry, so they showed, the 25-26 is a $265,700 deficit. How long have they been operating in a deficit? So again, and that would lead into Councillor Archibald's, what their plans going forward. but how many, I can't recall previous library budgets and how long they've been operating in this deficit. And if it's been a few years, why are they just striking a committee now to come up with 4 points to increase revenue?
It's, I don't know off the top of my head if they've been in a deficit prior to prior to the 25-26 fiscal year, without going and looking at their statements, but this has been a conversation since I've been here. Like, it has been presented as dire since I've been here, and just nothing has been done, and they're now basically at a breaking point. They don't have enough money to fund this deficit for 26-27. That is where they're at. So I think they've been trying, so they got rid of the bookmobile, they got rid of a few things to try to manage, but now they're kind of at the point that without closing actual libraries, they cannot cut anymore. Like, they cut 50% of their staff. They got rid of the bookmobile, they got rid of a bunch of other things. I think it's in the report there. And they're kind of at the point that they can't do anymore. And so it's not that it hasn't been presented before, but they're at a breaking point, I guess is how I would categorize it.
Yes, Counselor Smith.
I think it's whatever the province is gonna decide is gonna make or break this thing. If they're willing to not increase their funding and accept a decline in service levels or closing of libraries or whatever that's going to look like. There's a 71% funding partner. There's nothing that the municipality is gonna be to do en masse to make up for that. So this all comes down to the province, and any decision prior to what the province decides to do, we all know the big cloud that's hanging over at the province financial level. I think it's a moot point at this point. We can say to everybody that we support the library and we'll look at increases, but unless we have commitment from the province, it doesn't matter.
And you will note on the financial statements, under the revenue line province, the province did actually give an extra almost $200,000 in fiscal 25-26. But it was a one-time help payment, basically. It wasn't a ongoing increase, if that makes sense.
So they would have had a deficit this year, similar to what they're projecting next year. This is a bigger problem than whether Middleton's gonna give them $1,600 or $6,000. So any motion approved or not at this table doesn't matter. I would suggest I don't care if we approve it or not, subject to what we find out from the province and what we find out from our other municipal units.
I think we should just do what's in the motion that is on the floor already.
With some direction to staff to see if we can get a heads up from the other municipalities in the next 2 weeks or whatever time frame we have there.
Do you want me to rescind that motion?
Can't do it, then we have to,
Get the vote.
We
I
can,
don't think we have to put the staff direction in the motion, but.
No,
Okay.
I've taken a note. so,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All against? Motion carried. 6.7, RFD 016-2026, Records Management Destruction Policy. Executive Assistant. Oh, that's a different one.
I'm gonna try not to spew my words on this one,
Okay.
and I'm gonna try to go slow. So the current policy outlines how records are created, stored and retained, but does not clearly address when or how records should be destroyed once they are no longer required. In the absence of clear guidance, records may be retained longer than necessary, managed inconsistently, or disposed of without a standardized process. By updating the policy to include record destruction, it will provide staff with clear, consistent, and legal complaint direction on when records may be safely destroyed. This will support effective records management practices, reduce storage requirements, protect privacy, and minimize legal and operational risk. The proposed update clarifies expectations for staff and strengthens the organization's overall records management framework.
Wow.
Sorry, I went a little fast.
I move that council approve the replacement of the existing records management policy with records management structure policy.
Discussion? Yeah,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
pardon me?
Okay. I had just a quick clarification. Most of this seems to be focused on destroying old employee data and stuff like that kind of thing, so we don't hang on to SIN numbers and so it's not really talking about damage or destroying what would be archival quality stuff in terms of whether it's minutes of council. So I'm correct on that, and I'm clarifying more for the people watching.
I think minutes have to be kept forever.
Yeah.
But there's other things, there's like stuff that goes on that, you look back on in our current, we have the old original agreement with the RCMP and a bunch of these other things.
Yeah.
These are actually useful historical documents for the town going
Yeah.
forward. And that's not what we're talking about destroying. It's,
Okay. All those in favor? Against? Motion carried. Community concerns complaints as of January 2026, CAO.
Nothing outrageous to talk about here. You can see we added a couple new ones there. Nothing.
I just like you put the Mill Street sign is up. I checked it before I came. So it's up, so you can take that off. Yeah.
How is our bylaw enforcement doing with all this?
So this is not bylaw enforcement. These are just general complaints that affect the general public that we decided to kind of put in this log so that council is a little bit more aware of some of the complaints that we're getting from the public.
Okay.
But we don't put personal complaints on here or individualized issues.
Okay. And 7.2, town general and water utility financial report as of the end of November 2026. That would be the Director of Finance.
That would be. In your packet, you have, our financial statements up to the end of November, as the mayor said. The majority of our variances that we see are just timing issues, so, at our March meeting, we will be up to January. We're looking at November results there, because of the 2-week, holiday break, so we'll be back on track to be just 1 month behind, reporting this data going forward.
Any questions? For the Director of Finance?
Answered mine in her statement.
There you go. All right, thank you, yeah. Okay, anything by members? Councilor Knapp.
I have nothing. I do enjoy the way the town is cleaning up the snow, even though I have seen complaints about it. They should just drive outside of town if they want to see some more snow on the streets. But anyways, I think they're doing a great job.
Thanks. Councilor Fournier? Councilor Smith?
I just want to echo Councilor Knapp, the public works guys that are working their butts off out there. We see it, we appreciate it, and keep it up as long as we have to, I guess.
Councilor Archibald?
Excuse me.
No, I know, I'm leaving you for last.
Oh, okay, thank you. You know, I have something that's a little contentious.
Yeah, that's right, so we'll go with it, but I see your eyes rolling around.
All right.
So we're going to Councilor Blanchard.
Just wanted to thank staff for getting information packets out ahead of this meeting well in advance. Again, sincerely appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay, Councilor Bartlett.
So I had a citizen come to me and ask, and I know this is gonna be contentious, why we don't have a policy that allows ATVs to come into town to access services. And I, for one, I'm all for it. You know, we can easily say that there's ATVs tearing up the ball field. Those people are gonna be doing that regardless. That's not, you know, that's like saying, you know, there's speeders in town, so let's just remove the highways or the speed signs. I took it upon myself to look through Advance, and there's many municipalities in Nova Scotia that have policies in place that restrict ATV use to one or two streets to access different areas of town so that they can access service. Many municipalities are finding that this is a great economic driver as well. So when this person brought it to me, they brought it to me with an argument, and I cannot say that I disagree with anything they say. I just told them I'd bring it up at the Anything by members, and you know, maybe it's something going forward that we could look at. As I said, I know we've had citizens issues regarding our ATVs and trails and whether there should be one through town, etc. But you know, those are people, the ones that are doing the damage, the ones that are riding roads, and honestly, right now, they're still coming into town. You know, during the summertime, I've had 2 or 3 parked next to my building, come in for a meal and get in their vehicles, which cost-wise, I mean, they cost more than most of my vehicles. You know, like they're not, these are not, you know, children tearing around or, you know, destroying these things. And they have to meet the requirements of being road legal, insured, because all that is a requirement to be on the trails. So I think it's something that we should explore. That's all I got.
Thank you. Thanks. I don't have, I do also want to say about the public works guy, because I hear them 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning. And I know we've had some unusual weather and they've been out, and I know one of our dump trucks broke and the salt truck broke, and you know, and we got one of our guys, it's the guy that fixes them, but he was out plowing, so you know. They've worked very hard, so I'm hoping that we'll, and I too have snowmobiles going up and down my street.
And 6 snowmobiles going up and down the middle of Commercial Street the other day, actually.
But what I thought was funny, because there's all kinds of snow. But then there was no snow, so then all there was sparks. I thought, now if you set something on fire, I'm out of here. But anyway, just hopefully our winter will get better and we won't have too much about it. Anyway, thank you guys. If there's no further business, we'll move to in camera. So this concludes our live streaming of today's meeting. Our next meeting will be the town council meeting on Tuesday, February 17th. Agenda packages will be posted on the town's website on Friday, February 13th. And if you have any questions, concerns, comments, or ideas that you would like to have addressed during anything by citizens part of the agenda, please submit them to ea@town.middleton.ns.ca by noon on Tuesday, February 17th.